Hello and welcome to the walkthrough for setting up and using Roaming Throne, which is a free and open source tournament organization software currently geared for multiplayer free-for-all games and Magic the Gathering's Commander. While the software is generally pretty intuitive and easy to use, there's a lot of deeper functionality here that might not be obvious at the surface, so my hope is that anybody watching this video will be able to take something useful away from it. You can find the link to Roaming Throne in the description of this video in case you want to follow along with this video or if you just want to find it for yourself to use it. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and I will show you how to go through the process of getting your own copy of Roaming Throne and initializing it. So right here I am at the sort of landing page, if you will, once you follow the link down in the description. And here there are the 3 easy steps to initialize Roaming Throne. So step 1 is to click on File and make a copy. So File obviously referring to File up here, as we can see in the picture. So we'll just go ahead and make a copy. Every other step will come after this. So this is step 1, and we will do the next 2 steps in our copy of Roaming Throne. And so we can name our copy here. So we can name it My New Tournament. I'll spell that properly. And so we'll just wait a little bit for the new copy to be made. And obviously the amount of time you wait will sort of depend on your internet connection speed, among other things. All right, so now we are in My New Tournament, as we can see here. Can even rename it here. If, for example, I want to, fix that, perhaps, add a date or something like that. I don't know, 24/01/01. There you go. So we've already completed step 1. We can go to step 2. And so for step 2, what we need to do is to just click below this button here to give Roaming Throne the necessary permissions. And so this is necessary to allow all the attached scripts and functions to run correctly. There are going to be a few warnings along the way while doing this process. This is pretty typical with any sort of Google app. So essentially, it's going to tell you that, Roaming Throne can access your personal information and all of that. The program never does that at any point. It's completely open source. So if, you want to verify that for yourself, you totally can. You just have to click here, click on app script, and you can see the source code. You'll see that it's at no point accessing any of your personal information. But if you're still concerned, my recommendation would be to just use Roaming Throne on a brand new anonymous account, and that way there would be no real information for the program to access that matters. So we'll go ahead and click Grant Permissions. And so this is just going to run a little script that is basically going to require authorization. So it says the script attached to this document needs your permission to run. So we'll click OK, get this pop-up. Click on your email address that you want to use Roaming Throne with. Here we're going to click Advanced so that we can actually go to Roaming Throne. And so this is what's also shown in the pictures here, where we picked the email address, we clicked on the Advanced button here, clicked on Go to Roaming Throne. It says unsafe, but again, it's not accessing your personal information in any way. And we will just go ahead at this point and click on Allow. All right, so that is done. And then finally, we're just going to click on step 3 to initialize Roaming Throne. And boom. All right, so Roaming Throne is initialized. And we land here at this splash screen, just, where you'll find basically any information about whether or not you are using the most recent version of Roaming Throne. That we can see here, the version number, and this will automatically check against the original repository version, if you will. All right, so the actual way to sort of start using Roaming Throne is to click down here in the dashboard. And this is where we're going to start adding players to our player roster. And we can manually add email addresses. We can also add Decklists. It says here Mox field. Technically, you can use any email address you want, or rather any decklist you want, if it's just for, tracking decklists. But if you use a Mox field decklist here, it will automatically pull up the commander from the decklist itself, which is a nice little feature. Takes a couple of seconds. But if you're using any other deck building website, the commander won't be pulled up automatically. At some point we may support more, but for now, Moxfield takes good care of the community, and so I prioritized making sure that Moxfield is supported. So if you want to get started with the tournament, what you can do is you can start adding players. So for example, here I will add player 1, and I'm just going to use, essentially simulated players here, players 1 through 16. And so you can see here now we have 16 players, which is 4 pods recommended. And there's here a suggestion for how to run your event. Obviously, this is just a suggestion. You don't have to follow it. So we'll go ahead and click on Start Event, and this is going to be round 1. And obviously round 1 is going to be totally random pairings. And so it says running script up here, and now it says finished. So my recommendation is generally wait until it says finished before you start doing anything, but it's not a big deal here if we want to start, selecting winners. And so what's interesting here is that you can see for each pod over on the left, this field is only the available players in that pod, or we can select a draw for the pod. Alternatively, you could select a buy if you want. So the way the software is currently programmed to work is that if there is ever 3 players that would receive a buy, I should say, they are put into a pot of 3. So we would have 1, 2, 3, for example. And then if you don't want to have pods of 3 in your event, you simply give a buy to the entire pod. So this will be our round 1. And now that we've selected the results for round 1, we need to confirm them. So we'll just click confirm round results. And so we'll just wait for it to finish processing. This is usually one of the longer processes just because, we're calculating a bunch of opponent match statistics and stuff like that. So it's done. And we'll now have player rankings. This is just a little visual glitch. If you refresh, it's fixed. And so here we have all our winners, and then we have a bunch of players that have drawn. These are the rankings, and then we have everybody who's lost at the bottom of the rankings. So, typical for round 1. Why don't we go ahead and start a new round? You may notice I didn't click on top 4, just because we're not following the suggestion of single elimination here. So here it's going to ask for a new Swiss round, and so we'll click OK to start a new round with Swiss pairings. And so this is going to pair players up based on their records, and it's going to avoid making sure that players who've already played against one another play against each other again unless absolutely necessary. And so here, why don't we go ahead and pick some winners randomly. Great. And once again, all we have to do is confirm round results. It's going to do some processing. And then it's done. And so we'll have new player rankings. So what if I want to make a new round with, let's say, random pairings? If I don't want to do Swiss, imagine I'm running an event where every round is just going to have random pairings and I don't particularly care about player rankings. Well, you have all these buttons here duplicated up here in the roaming throne menu. So we can start an event, we can confirm round results, we can also make a new round, and here we have some deeper functionality. So for example, I can make a new Swiss round, which is just the next round button. I can do a new random round, which is not an option that I have available with the buttons on the dashboard. I can also make a new single elimination round, where you can see here I have top 4 and top 16, where these are options available over here, but we also have options to do top 10 and top 64. We also have the ability to generate match slips. So technically, we've already reported our round 2 results, so why don't we go ahead and make a new random round? You could make match slips for a round that's already been completed, but there's not a whole lot of reason for it. All right. So if I click on generate match slips, down here we now have our match slips, and so this will make match slips according to our pods. If we check here, 5, 6, 14, 9. Exactly. And so what we see here in terms of the order of the players, when it's not random, so like for example for Swiss, it will be based on players' records. So player 9 has the best record, the best ranking, then player 10, then 14, then 7. So if for example you wanted to have your pod turn order be based on players' records in the event, you could tell people that this is going to be the turn order they're playing in, or alternatively you could simply tell players to pick their player order through some other random means. And so here, this is just going to be random players, as you can see. And so here, same idea as before. I can pick 2 draws this time. We'll go to the dashboard and we'll just confirm round results. And so this will be round 3 as soon as it's finished processing. And so depending on how many players you have, it can take more or less time. I think for the maximum amount of players, sometimes confirming round results can take a little bit of time, but we're talking, 69 pods, over 250 players. So yeah, there's a lot more calculations to be done at that point. All right, and so match slips will always obviously reflect sort of the last round where they were generated. So if I make a new round, the match slips will not automatically update until I go ahead and generate match slips for the new round, and they'll stay here in this match slips little sheet. And so if I ever am done with my tournament and I want to reuse this copy of Roaming Throne, I can just restart to clear all data. Alternatively, a lot of people that are using the software are finding themselves going ahead and just grabbing a new copy of the sheet every single time. And that's convenient because it means that all of your data for this event gets saved in the cloud. But alternatively, if you want to keep using this version of Roaming Throne, what you can do is you can simply make a copy of your own copy of the sheet, and then use the original one, or whichever one you would like for that matter. And that's like having a backup of the data. Alternatively, you can simply download it as an Excel file, and that way, or even as a CSV file, and that way you'll have everything backed up. And these obviously can be printed. So as you can see, we're going to try to have 4 on each page. And so that way you can actually print and cut those out for players. So finally, there's, a couple of other things here that are always nice to have as sort of quality of life features. So if ever I want to, for example, I'm doing random pairings, let's do another random round first. We'll generate a new random round. Now, if for whatever reason I want to, for example, switch these 2 players, I can simply select one, then hold Control and select another. So now both are selected, and I can come up here and I can swap selected players around. And so this will just swap their position. And obviously, you can do it within a pod if you are so inclined. Not that there's too much reason to do so, but you can do it in any which way you want. Obviously, you have to do it just with players that are in pods. I forgot to pick one this time. So there we go. So we'll swap these 2. And so that'll automatically update everything here as well. And if ever there were players that had buys, you could swap a player with a player who had a buy. Not that I recommend doing that. So the way buys work is that they will be automatically awarded to the lowest ranking player who has not already received a buy, which is why I typically don't recommend that you do that. And so finally, we also have the ability to delete current round. So if for whatever reason, let's say I wanted to do a random round, but I accidentally clicked next round and made a Swiss round, you can go ahead and delete it. And as you can see, we're back on round 3, and round 4 has disappeared from here. All right, so these 3 columns here, buy, loss, and drop. I just want to quickly run through each one of these just to explain their functionality. So for buys, this allows you to basically award a player a buy before you create a new round. So if, for example, I've decided based on players' past performance in different tournaments that I want to award them a first round buy, what I would do is I would select, let's say, player 1, select their name here before clicking start event. And that way they will get a free buy in round 1. Alternatively, you could do it for any subsequent round if you want. So I could, at this point, give player 1 a buy. And so we'll try that out, just generating for the next round. You can also you can drop a player. So if a player drops from the event, you would simply drop them by selecting drop, and then you just leave this selected for the rest of the event, basically. So we'll drop these 4 players. And so we should have 13, 14, 15, and 16. And player 1 should have a buy. So player 1 has a buy, and we can see that we are suddenly missing 13, 14, 15, and 16. So what we can do here is we can select player 9 as a winner, player 2 as the winner here. And so this is what I was talking about earlier, where 3 players if there's 3 players left, they won't be immediately awarded a bye. Instead, they'll be put into a pod. And so what we can do is, if we don't want pods of 3 in our event, we can simply award this entire pod a bye. So we'll do that now. And let's look at one more thing. You may notice that this was now unselected automatically. It's just so we don't accidentally give a player, another bye going into another round. But let's, before confirming round results, let's assign a loss. And so assigning a loss works basically by selecting loss here before clicking confirmed round results. And if ever you forget for whatever reason, you can obviously just confirm round results again. That's not a problem before you create a next round. But yeah, so let's say we want to actually have one of these 3 players here have a loss for whatever reason. Let's say the judge determines that they need to get some kind of disciplinary action for this round, and so player 7 is going to be assigned a loss for this round. So what we'll do is we will select here, player 7 is going to get a loss this round. And now we'll confirm the round results. And so we'll just allow it to do its thing. Okay, and so now it's done. And so, yeah, the players will have been assigned a loss. So player 7 was assigned a loss, everyone else was assigned a draw. And so if we look here for player 7 does have an additional loss instead of having a bye. But player 4 and player 3 now have byes on their record, and the rest of the standings now reflect the players remaining in our event and their records. And so the only sort of last thing that remains to be said is that these ratings here, or these statistics, will be for the Swiss portion of the tournament. And so once you get to the single elimination round, the player orders will change, the rankings will change based on the results of the single elimination rounds, but these statistics won't automatically change. They won't update with subsequent rounds. So that'll give you your results for the Swiss portion of the tournament. If ever you want, for example, the final statistics, including, wins that were gained in the single elimination round, and then, the updated match win percentages and opponent match points, etc., you have the option to regenerate rankings, and you can do that excluding dropped players or including dropped players, however you like. Here we can regenerate these rankings including dropped players. And so now we can see that these rankings have been updated, and these are our players that we dropped, and they have D's next to them. So this is kind of interesting if, a player wanted to know how they did, in the Swiss portion of the event, pretty much, at least at this stage, or if they wanted to know sort of overall how they did by the end of the tournament, even though they've been dropped. And so this is all well and good, but what if I want to share the pod composition with my players? And for that matter, what if I want to share the player rankings with my players? There's a very convenient and easy way to do that from within the software, which is to go to File, Share, Publish to Web, and you can simply select any of the sheets that you would like to publish as a web page. So here, for example, why don't we share the most recent round, and we'll publish that as a web page. And in addition, we could also do the same thing for player rankings and publish it. And so you can see here, we'll have URLs for all of the ones that we published. And if I was to go to round 3, for example, it's not published currently. And we can see which pages are published down here. And we can always stop publishing them, which will basically remove the page from visibility anytime we're done with the event, for example. So why don't we go ahead and just check out what that looks like. So we'll copy this, open a new tab, and there you go. So we can see exactly what is being shown on the sheets. And your players will be able to see this just by following this link. Alternatively, you could just post like a QR code using this URL somewhere. I think there are probably plugins for Chrome that let you easily generate one. Alternatively, there are plenty of websites that let you generate QR codes from URLs. And why don't we also go ahead and look up the player rankings. And there we go. So we also have the player rankings. So one last thing to look at, I think, is this Google form integration. And so if ever you want players to sign up for your event, and you don't want to have to manually deal with everything, getting their names or email addresses, et cetera, this is very convenient. What you can do, attached to every copy of Roaming Throne is a Google form. And so here you can manage your form, and you have the option to edit your form. This is just a sort of default template. So for example, here I would probably want to rename it. So we'll just rename it my new tournament, and everything else looks good. I don't necessarily care, let's say in this event, for deck lists, or better yet, why don't I actually, care quite a bit about deck lists for this event? So you have the option to either just, entirely delete this question, which is here, delete. Alternatively, you can make it required. So now every player needs to submit a deck list. And so I can just, let's say get rid of this here. And now a deck list is required for my event. But alternatively, if I didn't want to require a deck list, I could just delete that. And I can undo if I need to. All right, so that is everything saved. No need to do anything else here. You have the option to add an add-on here. This obviously you'll need to give permission to separately and all that. But by doing so, by adding this QR code for Google Forms plugin, you can also generate a QR code that you can give to players so that they can immediately access this sheet themselves, which is very convenient. But, if I want somebody to actually sign up, then typically I would send them a link to the live form, which is click here, go to live form. And this is the sign up sheet. All right, and why don't we just test, a random person joining the event. So test@test.com, and this will be Testerson. And here's a Moxfield deck list. So this response has now been recorded. All right, so here we are back in the response sheet for our Google form. It's attached to our tournament sheet. And so from here, what I can do is I can go ahead and just copy everything after the timestamp, as this will correspond nicely to the fields that we want to fill in over here, i.e. the player name, email address, and Moxfield deck list. And so all I would need to do in this situation is just simply copy paste. Here we're getting a warning, and that's normal. We're in the middle of an event, and so you would not normally want to be editing this part of the sheet in the middle of an event, just to avoid accidents where you might accidentally delete a value or a player name or something like that. So you'll get this warning. It's basically telling you, are you sure? It's asking you if you're sure. I'm quite sure that I want to edit this, so I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. But if I click cancel, for example, it will just undo my attempted edit. So here we'll click OK. You can see here the deck list is there, and we just have to usually wait a little moment, and there you go. There's our commander. And so you can actually do this for multiple at a time. You don't have to do simply one. So for example, I do this here. We should get Ragavan again. And then I can also just copy paste 2 now. And so this might take a little bit longer. There's a delay that's programmed into it, but after a certain delay, yeah, we'll get both. There you go. And finally, why don't we go ahead and actually try to do like a top cut event or a top cut round. So I'll just get rid of these just to be safe. So now we are left with our original players. We have rankings from before, as you can see. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a top 4. So to do that, we just have to click on top 4. And so this will create a new round with only the 4 top ranking players included. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And there we go. Player 9, 10, 12, and 15. Let's check our rankings. 9, 10, 12, and 15. Exactly as we drew it up. And so here, if I try to, for example, give this pot a draw, that won't be allowed because this is a single elimination round. And so after a certain moment, it's going to detect that we tried to give a draw to this pod. And it's going to tell us, nope, a winner is required. So assigning pods, draws, or buys is not permitted for single elimination rounds. Make sure that each pod has been assigned a clear winner. And so this will finish, and now we can try again and have our big winner be player 12 after it all. And we'll confirm round results. existing data is detected, because we did try to write before. So all we have to do is overwrite it. And there we go. And so if we check the player rankings now, player 12 looks like they've come out ahead. And so I think that's about it for, sort of the main functionality. There's a few extra tools here. For example, you can toggle sheet visibility. If ever you want to be checking things like tournament parameters, for instance, you can check the tournament parameters here. And these are actually modifiable if you know what you're doing. I don't recommend you modify these if you don't know what you're doing, or if you're not really trying to sort of experiment with different tournament structures and stuff like that. So here we have the parameters, and so if, for example, you wanted to change the value of a win, a loss, a draw, or a bye, you simply change the values that are here. For things like minimum match win percentage, these are set to sort of, minimums that are sort of defined by the community. So you can actually get more information about those 2 points down here. But you may notice that this one is sort of inverted in terms of the contrast. That's because you don't want to be editing this value directly. Instead, use the override over here. So if, for example, I want to override minimum match win percentage such that if you never win a game in the entire event, your match win percentage, instead of being 0, will be 0.2 to help your opponents with their tiebreakers. You would simply put in a new value here for the override. And you can do the same thing with the dummy player match win percentage, and this is associated with how buys are handled. So for example, if I wanted to change this so that winning against dummy players is a little bit less penalizing compared to people who actually played games against real players, I could change this to 0.3, for example, and it would be updated there. And you can always restore the multiplayer defaults by pressing down here. So if I get rid of this, then this will return to 0.2, for example. And there's a little bit more explanation here about how tiebreaker or how buys affect tiebreakers, and you have the option to change that behavior in the actual calculation. So I think that's that. If ever you're done looking at the parameters, all you have to do is toggle the visibility again. So I can just hide it again. You can toggle visibility of all kinds of stuff. If you don't ever intend on using the Google form, you can hide that. You can go ahead and toggle the visibility of the title page if you just want to have the dashboard be right there, sort of front and center. And yeah, I think that pretty well covers it. If you have any more questions, be sure to join the Discord. You can find the link to that both on the sheet itself. If you look, for example, here in the title page, you'll find a link to our Discord. Alternatively, check the description below where you can find a link to our Discord if you need more, if you have questions or you need support, bug reports, feature requests, anything like that. Don't be shy. We want to make this software as good as we possibly can. So yeah, please give us all your suggestions, all of your feature requests, and all of your bug reports if you encounter any. And on that, I hope you put on some great events and come join us in the Discord.